Hello, and welcome to Podcasting as Praxis, where we're doing the thing we promised we would never ever do.
ASMR?
No. No, not that. I wish we were doing that. We would be better off doing it, but no, we're going to talk about Scottish politics this week.
Started so softly and now I want to kill myself already.
I mean, we're discussing Scottish politics, so that is good. Get yourself in that mindset. That's the right place to be. So I'm David. I'm here with Elijah.
Hi, sorry for interrupting from the get-go.
Just set the tone, mate. That's fine.
People talking over each other and interjection without introduction is very Scottish politics.
It very much is, James. Thank you very much for that.
True.
And Jamie?
Why am I here?
You're here to prevent David from coming at me, Elijah, with a claw hammer about the 30-minute mark, basically.
Fair enough.
So, we're just going to set this out now. We're not going to be discussing is independence good or bad. There are takes. We're not going to go into them. It's not worth it. We've said the same things for about 7 fucking years now. It's not worth doing anymore. So, rather than that, this is going to be...
It's probably good though, right?
Superb. Look, right. The reason we're not going to do it is very simple. There's no point. Like, we're not having a referendum right now. It's not going to happen anytime soon. Everyone in Scotland more or less knows where they stand. And for the avoidance of all doubt, right, I'm in favour, David's against, Elijah's in favour, Jamie's in England. That's it. There's no more context that's required, so...
There is no more cereal to be eaten.
That unfairly paints me in my position. I'm not against as such, I'm just against liberals doing it. There's some
David
nuance.
is evolving on independence. That's the updated statement.
I will only do it socialistly.
David's famously a unionist.
That's a new position compared to where we were about 12 months ago.
It is,
for the 2019 general election.
Don't say that. Don't say that. You'll scare him off.
No. It's true. It's true. But anyway, like I said, we're not discussing whether or not it's good or bad. We're just going to fucking leave it as a thing that hangs over everything else in Scottish politics and just won't address it, just like everyone else in Scottish politics. So, James, how did we get where we are?
Oh, right. So, some time ago, Alex Salmond climbed into an animal enclosure to feed a Solero to a gorilla. The gorilla was shot as a direct consequence of this, and this spawned a whole movement known as Kilts Up for Harambe, which set the major divide in Scottish politics between those who wear kilts and those who refuse to. Separately, it got Alex Salmond into a court case from which he was, ultimately unsatisfied with the result of not proven, which led to him founding a political party today. And if that sounds completely absurd and stupid and very parochial, then get ready for the reality of Scottish politics.
Yes. that all tracks, and there's hardly a word of a lie there.
Basically, the real story goes like this. It goes back to Margaret Thatcher, because every fucking thing in modern politics in the United Kingdom goes back to Margaret Thatcher, because she won. She got her way. Margaret Thatcher wanted to change the political system of the UK so that only people who were landed or had money could vote. So she wanted to introduce a poll tax. They decided to test it in Scotland first. Scotland as a whole decided this was a terrible idea. This led to the poll tax riots. This, in a roundabout way, led to her government falling, in a very roundabout way. But it inculcated a seething hatred for conservatism, by which I mean the Conservative and Unionist Party, not the kind of reactionary thing they backed, into Scotland. And it built upon, Labour's origins of the Red Clydeside and all this kind of stuff. And so basically, as a consequence of this, central Scotland, not so much for Highlands and Islands, but central Scotland became a Labour fiefdom for a long time. And Scotland got its revenge by inflicting Tony Blair, Alistair Darling and Gordon Brown on the world. Long story short, the Scottish National Party started to pick up some steam, and Tony Blair, in his infinite wisdom, figured it'd be a good idea to head this off. And the way to head this off, the advice he got from Scottish Labour, was to set up a devolved parliament, the Scottish Parliament. It was to be the Scottish kind of regional authority, except without the region part. They set this up. Labour did quite well in the first ever Scottish Parliament, and after that, it basically gave the SNP the shot in the arm they needed to be able to take Scotland, more or less. And Scottish Labour has atrophied to the point that it's basically the dearth of political talent, because from their perspective, they had a sweet thing going, and then the Scottish nationalists came along and took it from them, basically. And so all their politics can basically be reduced to those fucking SNP bastards, essentially. And that's why Scottish Labour in its present incarnation sucks.
There's this long line, this repeated, never-escaping trend of Scottish Labour people just getting their analysis completely wrong. And I think it starts around here with the infamous George Robertson quote about how devolution will kill nationalism stone dead.
Yeah, basically.
Tactical mastermind.
Because what essentially happened is, because Labour was totally safe, then they didn't have to put any political talent in it.
No.
They didn't have to do that at all. They used it as safe seats and, parachuted in people who were not particularly brilliant with political talent. And meanwhile, Tony Blair also did his thing where he went around murdering any political talent that wasn't staunchly Blairite.
Yep.
And so you put those two things together, and Scotland basically devolved to the point where the SNP didn't look complete shit in comparison.
Yeah.
And so we're able to kind of take the momentum from Scottish Labour. And that's basically the long and short of why Scottish politics is the way it is. The rest of the story is basically, we had an independence referendum in 2014 as a consequence of what we just discussed. And meanwhile, the Scottish Conservatives kind of reformed themselves by hitching their wagon to a woman called Ruth Davidson, who we'll talk about in a minute. And then as far as the Lib Dems are concerned, they basically run the islands where they, have cut a deal with the people who live there to allow them to worship their old gods in peace in exchange for ferries. And that's kind of it. That's it. I've described Scottish politics to you. Oh yeah, there's also a Green Party. That's it.
Yeah, we've tried, I think, on a few occasions over the entire course of the podcast to occasionally try to explain why the Lib Dems maintain power in the Highlands and Islands. We don't really know. I don't think they really know. It's just one of these weird things that just kind of keeps happening. Maybe it's because there's so few people and they're kind of good at local issues. I have no idea, but
the thing the Lib Dems always get any plaudits on is actually being capable at a local level. Like, they're usually quite good at stitching up a council and stuff, and I think, probably because of the more close-knit communities that you get up north, that's probably why they're actually able to turn that into some sort of electoral success so that Willie Rennie can continually go down slides.
Yeah. Basically, the shit at a national level, that works because the islanders don't trust national politics.
Yes.
They don't trust it, full stop. So having this party that's shit at a national level but good at a local level is a pretty good arrangement for them. Yeah. And that's it.
Okie doke. Well, I suppose that's a good primer. I think all I'll add to that is it's really easy to look at what the SNP did in the 2010s and beyond and think, wow, that's really impressive. When you put it into a context of it was up against the Tories in Scotland and Scottish Labour, it's actually not that impressive. Imagine if Keir Starmer had been running the party for 15 years. That's what Scottish Labour already is.
Yeah.
There's a little known fact, which is that one of the things that gave the SNP a shot in the arm was, and I can't believe this is true, a couple won the Euro Millions and donated £1 million to the SNP.
Yes.
Yeah.
Literally, they won the lottery of electoralism.
Yeah, I mean, there's a related point to sort of what's occurring now at a national level, at a UK level with Labour. I always point to the rise of the SNP as a good example of what you can do by focusing efforts at a successful regional or local level. You can demonstrate a level of competence at a sort of smaller multilateral area, and you can then build on that sort of smaller success in a smaller context where it's easier to achieve as a platform to sort of building up, right? The whole, where are people going to go? Where are Labour voters going to go? Well, they went somewhere, but it took a bit of time. In the grand scheme of things, it's about, 15 years from when the SNP first starts getting steam to when it achieves its first type of
breakthrough, real success,
of political hegemony. It's
about
15 years. Yeah, that's not a lot of time in politics, and I think that's worth keeping in mind. What can happen if you successfully weaponize a local interest?
Again, against the party like Scottish Labour.
Yeah, but UK Labour is looking more and more like Scottish Labour every single passing day.
And we can't wait to see the results of that.
Well, I mean, I too am looking forward to an English National Party sweeping to... Oh no.
Uh-oh.
No, it's fine. We've got the nip.
Yeah.
Right, okay. We're quite conscious of the fact that Scottish politics is a very particular kind of mind poison that most people won't partake in for good reason. Jamie, how are you feeling at the moment?
Very included.
I thought as much. Okay, so what we'll maybe do is we'll maybe just kind of you've had the kind of initial primer, but we'll go through like what the parties are that we've actually got in Scotland, and kind of where they sit, because they're not entirely analogous. The ones that have a UK counterpart, they're not totally analogous. Where should we start? Should we start in Scottish Labour?
I go on.
Right. Okay. Scottish Labour, like I said, it's the Blairite factory. It's where they're made. Like any sort of Blairite policy has probably been filtered through a Scottish mind at some point. They're all horrible. You've got Tony Blair, you've got fucking Brown, like it's Alistair Darling. They're all fucking culprits and are absolute proof that there is no such thing as Scottish exceptionalism, because they're just as bad.
I honestly think one of the strongest arguments for Scottish independence, and hear me out, David, is that at least it would get rid of that factory from the rest of the UK.
It would save them from it, yeah. No, that's true. Yeah. It would effectively be like a mercy suicide type thing, yeah. Patient zero just killing themselves before they can spread the disease.
Yeah, I would describe Scottish Labour as basically like they're anti-independence conservatives with a small c. You know, I know we joke about Labour basically being like the Tories, but the Scottish Labour really are like the Tories of maybe 10, 15 years ago, I think. Would you guys agree with that?
I don't know about that. I don't think you could really say that I think genuinely like they're as close as you can get to the true centrist ideal of a lack of ideology whatsoever at this point, because they are that drained of political capability.
Yeah, I think generally I would agree. I do remember, and again, I moved to Scotland in 2010 from Europe, so my frame of reference is a little bit smaller. But I do remember when Joan Lamont was in charge of Scottish Labour,
yes,
there were the occasional moments where Labour could see they were being outflanked from the left by the SNP with regards to things like tuition fees, free prescription, stuff like that.
Yeah, real simple.
And every now and again, Lamont would try to sort of head that off by saying something. Yes, Labour supports, you know, something not shit, something slightly good.
Yeah.
And then the next day, you would get someone like Chukwamana, or someone from the head Labour office would say, no, that's completely not true. We don't support that at all. It's, you know, not happening. That's not Labour policy. And you'd be like, well, cool, okay. You tried. An attempt was made. But that was not long lasting. I mean, Richard Leonard maybe tried. I think he was meant to be the sort of left-wing candidate, wasn't he?
He was meant to be like the Corbyn analogue, essentially. He was like the Corbyn lot, like, Richard Leonard.
Richard Leonard came from a union background and stuff. Like he was generally not that bad on a policy play. He was no Corbyn.
Yeah.
And even then, like, as anyone who listens to this podcast knows, Corbyn was the compromise and not what we were actually hoping for. So Leonard was like a little more of a disappointment, but at least he wasn't a Blairite.
Remember Neil Findlay was also meant to be the great left hope when he ran. I don't remember against who, but he lost. And since then, he's become very, very strange. But yeah, Richard Leonard just ended up being a bit gormless, wasn't he? Like
he was hamstrung at every single possible opportunity by the machinery of Scottish Labour HQ. Like, if you thought Jeremy Corbyn got it stinking, like, Richard Leonard couldn't write a fucking email without it being fucking intercepted and changed. Like,
that is not a joke. That's not an exaggeration. That's literally true.
Yes.
This is like Jackie Bailey, etc.
Yeah. There's also, like, this leads into a more general point, which is the impression in Scotland for a while has been people asking, well, what's the point of Scottish Labour? Because anytime they try and do anything to actually deal with political reality in Scotland, it's either shut down by its own machine or overruled by Labour down south.
Yeah.
And that's been, that's fed into their decline, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah, that's Scottish Labour in a nutshell, really, yeah.
Yeah. I don't really disagree. I'm personally a bit more just sort of angry about their existence, or I take it a bit more personally, I think. Being an immigrant, maybe, I don't know. But there's a level of visceral antipathy to Scottish Labour among the sort of general Scottish left, which is very well deserved, I think.
I think the only thing I would take issue with is the idea that we joke about Labour being the same as the Tories.
Yeah, basically. I don't know, in Scotland, I genuinely do think they are basically, they're the Scottish Tories before the Tories went flashlight, is my kind of take on them.
They've moved to occupy the space in which the Tories used to, yeah.
So the same as English Labour, then?
Yes. Yeah. Well, especially now where the Blairites are kind of, on the rise again. So, totally.
Yeah. But just remember, they've done this for 10 years now. At least.
Who's I genuinely don't know the answer to this, which is really bad of me because I'm meant to be tied into Scottish politics, but I don't care. They're not relevant. Who's the leader of Scottish Labour right now, David?
Anna Sarwar.
Yes. I remember now.
Yes. I can't remember what it is that he did that was bad. I know that it is bad and it's really not very Labour-y, but just Google Anna Sarwar dodgy or something like that and you'll find some tabloid
small
link.
Business owner or something, isn't he?
He's ran every single time. I think it was almost Trumpian. There's a family business and undisclosed accounts. And,
there's all sorts of weird shit going on there. Yeah. So just go ahead and Google that.
He's an absolute crime guy. Is that our official statement on the matter?
It's a crime that he's leader of Scottish Labour. Yes, that's right.
So I looked up his Wikipedia page, and there's a section called ideology.
Does it have one of those disambiguation links that says you might want to look at financial crimes or something like that instead?
I mean, not quite, but it does have a section specifically headed ideology. Do you want to hear Anna Sawa's ideology? Because this was almost certainly written by one of his goblins in his office, right? Described as being on the political right of the Labour Party, Sawa identifies as a Brownite and has been critical of both Tony Blair and Jeremy Corbyn. He says former Prime Minister Gordon Brown is one of his political heroes. As for Blair, Sawa has been heavily critical of the Iraq War, calling it the worst foreign policy decision in my lifetime. Sawa was opposed to leaving the European Union and insisted that the UK needed to stay in a single market in order to counter the Conservatives' austerity policies. Despite having criticised Corbyn in the past, Sawa insisted that his economic plans would be even more progressive and radical than those of Corbyn and John McDonnell.
He's such a centrist, he can't even commit to centrism properly. He's got to find the compromise centrist guy, which is Gordon Brown.
Yes.
No, Blairism, that's a bit too, I'm the real big brain guy over here. I'm going to go with Gordon Brown. I'm a Brownite. It reminded me of his dad's Facebook page, which if you go to personal life under Mohammed Sarwar, it said he's a supporter of Glasgow football teams, Celtic and Rangers, which is just that's perfect, I think, for British political centrism in a nutshell. Yes, I support.
It's the zenith of centrism, absolutely. Yeah,
I mean, it makes a bit of sense. He spends a Friday night, tanning back some cans and playing the pipe and flute, and at the end of it, he has autoerotic asphyxiation kind of thing to punish himself. Yeah, very much kind of.
Jesus.
Oh. Okay, right, well, we move on then to the Scottish Tories.
Please, God, yes.
Apparently, I've just looked it up, apparently he accepted a £4,000 political donation from a company owned by a convicted paedophile.
That was it. That was the one. I knew there was something there. Yeah. Labour friends of nonsense. Right, anyway, moving on. Scottish Tories. Who would like to take the Scottish Tories?
I don't recognise them. Do you mean the Ruth Davidson party?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Okay, so the Tories in Scotland did terribly until along came Ruth Davidson, who is a sort of alright speaker. She's okay. She's got a little bit of charisma to her.
Which, again, in Scottish politics is wild and unknown for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. And I only reference this, hear me out on this, she's a lesbian. And she was essentially parlayed that as being the look, we're not like the other Tories, we're progressive, and we're not the old fuddy-duddies, we're not your old Conservative Party, we're a new party, we're the Ruth Davidson Party, essentially. Despite being, a bit of a danger when it came to voting for LGBT rights and all the rest of it, as you expect from Tories. So...
Yeah, they love a bit of tokenism, don't they?
Yeah, they basically rebuilt the party around Ruth Davidson. And then when Boris Johnson got in, Ruth Davidson took a long, hard look at things and said, nah, I'm out. This is not going to work. And she resigned as leader. Bit embarrassing for them because they literally, their election leaflets coming through the door would be Ruth Davidson. And then in tiny, tiny text, on the back page at the bottom right, it would be promoted by the Conservative and Unionist Party. That's how they were going for it. And so she still appears on a lot of their election materials, endorsing people. And I know someone whose elderly parent is apparently a lifelong Tory and who now has reduced capacity. And they are responsible for helping her vote, right? And they received the voting forms for the Conservative and Unionist Party, right, for their new leader and for their list MSPs. And this is how blatant it was. When the vote form came through with the statements from each of the list MSPs, they wanted to, people who were standing to be MSPs on the regional list for the Conservatives, it started with a foreword from Ruth Davidson saying who she suggested everyone endorse. The actual voting stuff started with a statement from Ruth Davidson going, yeah, just vote for these particular people.
That's great. It's like the Entertainment 720 Parks and Rec thing where Tom just plasters his own fucking brand over everything. Tiny little letters, Jackson Carlaw, down at the bottom as a footnote. So
they're in a bit of a bind where they basically need to move on from Ruth Davidson, who I believe is becoming a baroness or is a baroness now.
She's taken the ermine. Yep.
Fantastic.
She's fucking off.
Yep. But they need to kind of move on from her. I believe she's still an MSP up until this election that's coming up that we're doing this podcast for. But in her place, they have a new leader. David, tell us about a new leader.
The new leader is a dauber. He is best defined by his only other occupation that we know of, which is a part-time football referee.
Now, if you wanted to find the kind of guy that everyone in Scotland could love, it would be a football referee. There's a fucking Matt McGinn song. People should just bring that out. Do you know the tune? Why did I ever become a football referee?
I like to think of it as not cop, but cop adjacent in kind of vibe.
Yes. It's the pussy cops who can't actually, put themselves out in any, level of contact with real people in cities. So they just go to fucking... He was refereeing Champions League games, the fucker.
Yeah.
There was an infamous moment. He missed a fucking vote.
Yeah. He is famously known for, in fact, we played it when he became leader on the podcast, that interview where if he could enact any one policy, it would be stronger controls on gypsy travellers. It's like, cool, mate. Very good. That was the first thing he would do with the unlimited power of the state, would be to crack down on GRT people. Love to see it. Thanks very much, mate. Good job, prick.
Do you want to hear everything you need to know about Douglas Ross, by the way?
Oh, yes.
I think we just did, didn't we?
Well, there's one little pertinent detail. He is currently a sitting MP, member of the House of Parliament in Westminster. He has stated that if he becomes an MSP at this election, he's going to double job it and stay both an MSP and an MP at the same time and get salaries from both.
Well, it's not like he's fucking busy, is it?
Not really, no.
No, he's going to be a double jobby. Jobber?
No, Jobby was right.
Jobby was right. Being one turd wasn't enough. He's gonna be two.
Well, he's an absolute cunt. So let's just all call him Rugless Doss on Twitter and then forget all about him.
Yeah, that'd be grand. Someone popped into one of his live stream Q&As with a fake name, which ended up being fairly hilarious. If you haven't seen that.
Oh, prick. Anyway, yeah, Scottish Tories. They're just Tories, except weirder. Like, it's a very specific type of brain disease you need to really have to be a Scottish Tory of all things. So yeah, you can probably imagine. So there's probably enough said on them.
Yeah, it's Scottish Tories. I imagine that like that meme where the kid's got the boot stamping on his face, but when you like pull back his own hands like in the boot.
Yes.
Yeah, to a T.
That's absolutely it. Right, the Scottish Lib Dems.
Willie Rennie!
They are led by Willie Rennie. It's very important that you get the intonation on his name right when you say it. You have to sound like you're going down a slide with enthusiasm, because that is Willie Rennie's political trajectory, going down a slide with enthusiasm.
Yeah.
All he does is photo ops.
It is,
It's
that's
great.
it. The man exists to do a weird photo op. I'm convinced that there's someone in that Lib Dem office who is bored at their mind, and just every time an election comes round, they try and get themselves fired by trying to devise a weirder thing for him to do. And the man's so oblivious to himself, he just goes, "That sounds great," and just goes ahead with it.
Yeah, fucking let's go to the beach. Put me in a giant beach chair, so I look like a tiny person.
His most recent photo op was literally sitting on a beach with the Forth Road Bridge, was it, in the background, I'm pretty sure?
Yep.
On a giant, and I mean like three to five times the size it should be, deck chair in yellow, because Lib Dems, with, was he sitting, it was a young child he was sitting with, like he was reading him a story or
Some
something?
shit like that, yeah. And then the child started crying, and they made sure to get and take and publish the pictures of the child crying and him looking confused at the child crying. It's just
Being
fucking
taken
wild.
back
It's so
by,
good.
by their mother.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's genuinely, I don't quite get the bit. Like, it's clearly some kind of bit. I don't get it. In the last elections, my favourite bit in the 2016 elections was Willie Rennie went to a fucking petting zoo, right? And he gave an interview in front of a pig pen. And he said, well, this is basically symbolising what this campaign is all about. And I don't really understand it. I can't really, I can't express it, but I'm sure someone somewhere will make sense of what it means. As in the background, two pigs started shagging.
Fucking perfect. Like, honestly, whoever it is that organises these things requires a fucking medal.
Maybe it's just him and he's living his best life, and we're all, like rubes for dunking on him because he's having a great time. That would be the happy
It might
ending.
be. I mean, it's not going to stop me, but it might well be. The guy's just fucking unreal. Like, the deck chair thing, just like, what is the message behind that? Is it, I am a manlet? Like what energy is he trying to give off in the giant deck chair?
It's such a big deck chair. It's legit like Trump loyal shit. He looks like a small person. He looks like a fucking Gulliver's Travels guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, in 2016, they did a good thing, which is they did all that stupid bullshit, but then every chance they got, they said, and of course, our policy is a penny on tax for education, a penny for education, a penny for education. And it kind of worked, because you ask people what are the Lib Dems about, and like, oh, they're going to put a penny on education. And it kind of stuck. I don't know what their equivalent is this time. Like, I've not heard it. I don't know what
I don't
it is.
think it's, whatever it is, it's not came out yet.
Yeah.
The fuck's that supposed to mean anyway? They're going to put a penny on education?
Yes.
Nothing, because they're not going to get the chance to do it. It's just something to stick in people's minds, so people go, putting a penny on education. We like education, and a penny's not much. That sounds good, right? But it worked.
Does it sound good though?
I mean, to people who think, no. But to, people who just kind of hear shit and go, I suppose I'll toss a vote or a list vote to the Lib Dems, Like, I honestly, their strategy seems very much to be the case of, we're just going to hold our niche. And I kind of can respect that a little bit. I mean, obviously I don't like the party, but, if your strategy is, we don't have ambitions, but we're not going to decline like Scottish Labour, I think that's, I don't know.
Yeah, they don't really rock the boat, do they? They
No,
just kind of...
What in Christ's fuck is that picture you've just posted in the Discord?
That's the deck chair. That's him. That's Willie
the
Rennie.
It's going to go...
that
We'll post
cannot
links
be
to
real.
these. That's real. That is real
It's
and
real.
authorised by the Liberal Democrats in Scotland. In fact, click through to that and just go through the little thread that I've made of other photo opportunities. There are some fucking belters.
This will get circulated for you, our listener. Like, if you go to our Twitter, @PraxisCast, about the time you're listening to this episode, you'll find a whole bunch of these pictures.
We've got Willie Rennie in a giant deck chair. Willie Rennie going down a slide, and the slide has been painted with flames, with children also on the slide. The next one is him wrestling a sheep with a big gun face. Then you've got him dressed up as a wizard. Then you've got him gunning at a boxer dog. Then you've got him dressed up as Santa with an elf, and the elf's hat says the sun. And then you've got him building sandcastles with children and looking extremely excited about it. Then you've got him dressed up as Marty fucking McFly outside a fucking DeLorean. And then you've got him winning fucking go-karting and doing a mid-air jump photo.
He's having a great time.
He is.
I can't
He's fucking living life. If anyone's actually winning at Scottish politics, it's Willie Rennie.
How are the Lib Dems so consistently normal? I mean, honestly, all of that fucking like mad shit he's doing there is like way more serious politics than fucking gurning at a pint of milk or like executing squirrels in your backyard.
I was gonna say, like, there's precedent for the English Lib Dems with weird photoshops, like Tim Farron and his fucking jug of milk. But that was just weird.
I know you say weird photoshops. You say weird photoshops. That implies you didn't fucking do it.
No, I said photo shoots.
Oh, sorry.
Like,
right.
you've got you've got fucking Tim Farron with his milk. You've got every year Joe Swinson with her fucking Easter eggs that she hates for reasons
Vince
unknown.
Cable in his hat, like
Vince Cable in his hat, aye. And then you've just got Willie Rennie doing literally fucking anything the photo op guy tells him to do.
I'd forgotten about Vince Cable's fucking sex crime hat.
Yeah, Vince Milady Cable.
Yeah, going in for the George Galloway voter there, like.
Yeah, big time.
I thought he was trying to do like a Breaking Bad thing, but just very
No.
misfired.
He was just doing a fucking weird Vince Cable thing.
Yeah.
Right, but I think that's probably enough on the Scottish Lib Dems.
Yeah.
There's no point in talking about the policy platform because nobody cares about it, and we don't know what dark secrets that they promise up north to continue giving them seats.
Ferries. It's ferries. It's just ferries.
Yeah, okay, ferries. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's the three unionist parties.
That's the three big unionist ones. So let's start hitting out at the independence ones. The SNP,
The Machine. And like
so the
appropriate music in the background for that.
The SNP are, up to this point, an electoral force, except the force is occurring within a vacuum. Imagine if a broad church was an actual viable thing, and broad churches are viable things when you make it a single issue to unite people with. Don't worry about that, we'll sort it after the thing. And it's dead easy to keep a party together. Labour can't hold itself together because it actually needs to make fucking policy decisions, at least down south. Up here it doesn't matter, because there's only one question. And that's one of the big reasons that Labour's fell apart the way it has, is because it can't unite on any one policy position, because it is a broad church and people are now actually wanting ideology out of the party, and it's not going well. The SNP don't necessarily have to do that. They can do a bunch of internal compromise stuff, and so long as the independence question is finally answered the right way, that's fine. People are generally willing to wait, and that's largely been their success.
I think for people outside of Scotland, I think the most interesting aspect of the SNP is the sheer hegemonic success. Right? That after so many years of picking up so many seats in such a wide spread of the country, they're still polling so high and they have such high approval ratings. Like, everyone fucking loves Nicola Sturgeon after years in government, and that never happens in like your sort of standard Western kind of liberal democracy. That's an anomaly.
Clarification: not everyone loves her.
Okay, sure, but in relation to the way approval ratings for
relative
political
to
party
anyone
leaders
else,
and people
yes,
in government usually go, right? This is anomalous. It's the kind of thing that you don't really see anywhere. That after so many years in actual power, they're still pretty Teflon. They've got the whole, like, I honestly think a large part of it is they've really, really doubled down on the Obama kind of approach to politics, which is to appear to be everything to everyone, and then anything that you don't want to appear to be, you otherize really hard. And I think that's basically it. That's their success, because, there's a lot of voters in Scotland who genuinely believe the SNP are a left-wing party.
Yeah, and the SNP, they're a self-described centre-left party. they are a centre party. They're not necessarily remotely a left party. They are.
I mean, that becomes relative, you know. What is centre left nowadays?
Yeah, they're centre left relative when you've got fucking Scottish Labour and the Tories sitting there. Then you could argue, even then, to be sat next to Scottish Labour and the Tories and then only be able to call yourself the centre left party is in itself quite telling.
No, I meant even like Europe-wise, like if you compare them to like En Marche in France, right? Macron's party, I reckon you could probably accurately describe the SNP as centre left. I think, like in a wider context of things, I'm not too fussed with the name, of course. What is left?
The concept, the concept of a centre left is in itself meaningless because we all know there's three separate groupings. There's the left wing, there's the right wing, and there's the people in the middle who really want to pretend to be left wing because they're embarrassed about saying they're right wing. Like, that's the three groups in politics, and the SNP definitely fall into the third camp. There are left wing elements of the party. I mean, you can look at certain people. Mary Black, for example, is someone that you could quite easily say, well, she sounds pretty left wing. But at the same time, it's all part of the broad church. Like, I've got a lot of problems with the SNP, not specifically just because of the fucking pro-independence stance and it being a Liberal party, but it's more the fact that they are very, very good at talking like a left-wing party. And part of that is down to the fact that they're doing that in an absolute vacuum of left-wing policy for the most part. What there is in left-wing policy from other parties, which we'll go on to, you don't really hear about because they don't get given the space for it. In any sort of way that the media will let messaging happen, because the media loves the hegemonic SNP and the uphill battle against them. Like, that's really all there is to it.
It's a one-party state! David, it's a one-party state. Are you not outraged?
I would imagine that the enduring popularity of the SNP is entirely down to fucking English dickheads on Twitter, like calling Sturgeon Jimmy Cranky every time she's in the news. Because, I honestly, every time I see that, I think about getting in the car and driving north to vote for them.
Yeah, like, you're not wrong. Like, part of the SNP's trick, right, and I've talked about this before, is that we live in a time of declining conditions. And in England, the general thing that, like, you know, UKIP and the Tories have done is to turn around and point at, you know, look at your black neighbour, look at your immigrants, look at, you know, they've done all they've hit the historical racist kind of, you know, otherisation and, you know, the slide into fascism to do it. Scotland's been lucky. You know, the SNP get to point to an actual real democratic issue with the way power is distributed and, like, the way Scotland votes historically and what it gets in terms of governments. And they've basically been able to offload it all by pointing at Westminster and going, look, it's them fuckers. It's them fuckers. And so that's been key to a lot of their success. Like, people talk about anti-English sentiment. It's not really anti-English sentiment.
Well, it fucking should be.
Well, let's see. Thereby hangs the tail.
I would say anti-English sentiment is real, but it's good. And it's not racist.
Absolutely.
I can
speak. Since I live south of the border, I can absolutely, like, 100% confirm that everyone down here has only 3 points of reference for Scotland, and that's the Crankies, Ur Woolley, and Russ Abbott.
Yeah. Oh, God, wow. God, I wasn't expecting to be the fucking English apologist on the podcast, so I'm feeling a bit weird now.
Well, you should have done your fucking homework, then.
Apparently, I don't fuck all of us.
It's like baldness, right? It's a spiritual thing, really.
Oh, wow.
You know, I mean, there's Northumbria. That's, you know, not really English in the sense that we understand it. You know, like in a metaphysical, political ideology sort of approach. Or Liverpool.
If I drive far enough south, people ask me if I'm Scottish. Mm-hmm. And the point where that happens is well north of France. So take from that what you will.
Yeah. Like, oh, God, wow. I've got family in Hull, and when I go down there, it's quite interesting to see the different reactions you get. Because some people genuinely think, oh, right, so what bit you from then? And I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, well, whereabouts? I don't quite clock your accent. And I have been mistaken for being a local before. But if I go south of Hull, and I go further down into England, then I and my cousins who live in Hull and have the most Hull-like accent you can imagine do get all called Scottish. It's really quite bizarre.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, I've never had this issue.
Oh, fuck. What are we talking about? Aye, SNP.
Me neither, but I've never been to England. No, that's not true. But I don't go.
Like,
Wise.
Yeah, they basically, like, the SNP, by styling themselves as against the Tories and against that regressive right-wing policy, even where they're actually comfortable with some of it, by styling themselves that way and by offloading everything onto the hated Westminster and its Tory governments, they've basically been a bit like Teflon. Because it's kind of like, no matter how much they fuck things, and they have fucked things, it's nothing compared to the fucking, like, scorched earth garbage fire that's taken place in Westminster, Like,
there's a lot that the SNP can thank Labour and Tony Blair specifically for, because if it wasn't for the pivot away from any sort of left-wing policy, the SNP would have had a much fucking harder time. Had Jeremy Corbyn came about a few years earlier, things may be very different. We don't quite know, because it's that absolute vacuum of ideas or voice on the left at all really gave them the space to just do the bare minimum on that front and toss an occasional bone in. Like, here's some free prescriptions. Yeah, okay. Here's some really convoluted fucking bus pass or some shit like that. Like, that kind of stuff is all you need to do, really, to say, well, we're trying. There's a lot of it that gets hidden behind, but Westminster won't let us do the good things. We want to do them properly, etc. And there's a lot of that. And they're a single issue party. They want that thing, so they're going to use certain issues in such a way. But at that point, it starts to betray the centre-left message, which is something that they are, unfortunately, quite famous for, because they will use a wedge on the left and put that into the independence issue and say, we could do this so much better if we were independent, but you just need to wait for a referendum, guys.
I mean...
And it fucks it all.
Yeah, to an extent, some of that, I would say maybe a bit more than people might think, is true. There are issues with, the Barnett formula, budget settlements. There's no borrowing powers. A lot of the actual mechanisms by which you would usually enact change via investment in a domestic economy from a left-wing perspective is hamstrung. But they are very much still coasting on those few years when they were able to outflank Labour from the left pretty publicly, pretty viscerally, like it was big things that you could see on things like prescriptions and tuition fees, and then later there were things like the bedroom tax. Like, there's been a lot of high-profile.
There has been, issues. It's not to say that they haven't done good things, because they have done a few, but they're very few and far between. I'm saying
high-profile. Yeah, I'm saying specifically high-profile because they've managed to really conquer the use of sort of symbolism. It's almost like the last successful engagement of liberalism as a political ideology, right? Where they're successful at using that kind of symbolic, superficial stuff that liberals love. But they're actually good at doing it, and it works. And they also know that it did have to come with some material benefits, and there have been some. Yeah. Right. And other liberal parties could really have a much stronger power base if they knew that. And I like to frequently compare Starmer and Biden, where, like, Biden will at least, make some token movements towards the left, and Starmer just refuses to understand the tactical viability of that. We don't know how successful Biden's going to be, but this idea about liberalism being successful when it can meet that sweet spot between just enough material compromise and the right type of symbolic messaging. I think the SNP is a very interesting case study for people outside of Scotland.
The thing with that comparison is Biden, like, genuinely wants to defeat, like, Trump. Do you know what I mean? Like, he'll work with the left to some extent because he's aware of the fact that, like, he doesn't want to be the new Hillary Clinton. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't want to be the guy that like lost a fucking open goal election to a roaring fucking dipshit. Whereas Starmer,
he nearly did. I mean,
he nearly did. Oh yeah, he absolutely barely like scraped through, which is fucking. I'm not standing for the guy at all. Like he's fucking useless. But whereas like Starmer is just a fucking MI6 plant or whatever. You know what I mean? He's just he's just there to tank the fucking Labour Party on purpose.
Yeah, so this the other day. I mean, he might not be, but if he was, would he be doing anything any differently? Probably not.
No, I've been quite consistent on this. Like, he is controlled opposition. He is simulated opposition, in fact. And the thesis that our jokey AI Starmer is indeed a more effective Labour leader than the real thing. So at that point, you have to ask, well, is it a distinction with a difference or not?
That's it.
He is there. Like, he is a state asset. I'm convinced. It doesn't matter whether he knows he is or not. He is.
Yeah. The thing with I get what you're saying with they're probably like the last gasp of successful liberalism, but one thing that we are seeing is that as liberals, they are completely fucking useless when they are faced with a culture war issue, and that's now starting to take its toll, which will take us on to another pro-independence party, which is good on this. And doesn't have TERFs in it, unlike all of the other fucking parties we've just spoke about, which is the Scottish Greens. And I suppose, James, you really need to take this one. Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, long-time listeners will know this. Full disclosure, I am a Scottish Green. And I'm not just a random voter Scottish Green. I've been deeply involved in the politics of the Scottish Green Party. I've been employed by the Scottish Green Party previously at last election. I'm not doing anything for them this time round. That's, other people are taking that. So everything I'm about to say, please do take it with a bucket of salt. I encourage skepticism and to look at it yourself and make your own opinions. The Scottish Greens started back in the day as an ecology party. And they were, part of the whole ecology party of the United Kingdom. Eventually, when the Scottish Parliament came about, the whole thing split. And it was an amicable split. And so the Green Party in Wales and the Scottish Green Party are not the same party. Scottish Labour is a subdivision of Labour. Yeah. Scottish Lib Dems are a subdivision of the Lib Dems. The Scottish Conservatives are a subdivision of the Scottish Conservatives. The Scottish Greens are their own thing. And that has meant that the Scottish Greens have been able to go their own path, pursue a different political climate in Scotland. And I think it's fair to say that most of the Scottish Green Party's policies these days are socialist, even if the Scottish Green Party as a whole is still a tiny little bit nervous about claiming that label. And I'm quite pleased with that. I'm quite proud of it. I honestly think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I think the Scottish Greens are the most successful left-wing party in Scotland, and I think it's fair to say they're actually left.
Oh yeah, by far, yeah.
They're pro-independence, and I joined them at the end of 2014 because, I was pro-yes, and that is the one fucking question in the country these days. And at the end of that whole thing, I took a long, hard look and I said, well, it's either SNP or it's Scottish Green. And I decided that I liked the Scottish Greens policies more, and I figured it was better to be, sincere than to pursue something for the sake of just having success necessarily. I didn't quite realise the potential that was in the Scottish Greens when I joined. And they are led by co-leaders, unlike the other parties. There are two leaders. It's Patrick Harvey and Lorna Slater at present. Patrick Harvey is the only one that's in Parliament, though Lorna is on the regional list for Edinburgh, I want to say. She would have been number 3 on the regional list, but then Andy Whiteman decided to shit himself very publicly and storm off out of the party, which I guess we'll talk about in a bit.
But James, how will women be protected if Andy Whiteman doesn't get to do whatever the fuck he wants? Sorry.
I can't. No, I just I my brain genuinely faults with that because I can't even engage with it. Andy Whiteman is a deeply unpleasant man. I know him personally, and he went about what he did in the most personally awful and destructive way possible. That I can't talk about because it's not my business, and I'm not the person or the people he was personally awful to. But I know about it. So he's a badger. Take my word for it. So that's it. And the major, so we talked about the culture stuff and David used that as a lead-in. A few years ago, the Scottish Greens were convinced by some person, who knows who they were, to essentially be a pro-trans party, the only pro-trans party in Scotland, to be entirely on board with trans positivity. And whoever did this was thinking at the time that, this seems like the natural, obvious fault line, other than the big question, because it shows up the contradictions of the SNP quite broadly. And also, it's morally right. Mm-hmm. And that leads us to where the Scott Greens basically sit now, where essentially the SNP hates the Scottish Greens because the Scottish Greens can actually credibly attack the SNP from the left about the things they say they're about and won't do. And there's lots of historical examples of this. Like, people might not remember, but when Alex Salmond was in charge of the SNP all that time ago, the SNP stood on a platform of scrapping the council tax and then just quietly got rid of it. And there are arguments going in where, the council tax is regressive, we need to restructure it, etc., etc. All true. And then they just dropped it. And it's kind of been that way with all of their policies. And where the Scottish Greens have in recent years actually started to do well is when they've actually firmly committed to following up on left policy and then pressuring the SNP. And a lot of people kind of make criticism that the Scottish Greens are in the pocket of the SNP, and they totally misread the nature of the relationship in that. Because the Scottish Greens basically pressure the SNP to do what they want, to actually deliver on their left-wing policy, because otherwise the SNP have to cut a deal with, Scottish Labour, which is never going to happen. Scottish Lib Dems, that might, but, do they really want to build ferries? Or the Scottish Tories. And that's basically it. That's the structure, and that explains our last Scottish Parliament.
Ironically, I think the last high-profile moment when this happened was about a housing issue, and the specific Green Party parliamentarian who was the face of that is now no longer a Green Party member.
Yeah,
So it's a small country.
And it doesn't, at present there are only 6 Green MSPs. We'll see whether that goes up or not at this election. I'm quietly hopeful.
I think the polling is optimistic, I think.
Excuse me, I should correct myself. There are 5 Green MSPs right now. One of them left. We should probably talk about that, because that speaks to the current state of Scottish politics quite directly.
Definitely, that's a nice
David, I've been talking too long.
Do we want to just contextualize before getting into the nitty gritty? Like, why did we decide to record this today of all days? What has been happening, and why the case study that we're about to talk about is.
Let's just kind of revisit that point, right? That this would be the fault line. Would be trans rights would end up being a fault line in Scottish politics, and yes, the SNP. The notably unified to a terrifying point block of the SNP has finally, after fucking years, had a proper public falling out with itself in places, because of the forgive me, what's the name of the bill?
Gender Recognition Act.
So the Gender Recognition Act has been kind of working its way through the many long fingers of the Scottish government system through multiple surveys and
it's been SNP manifesto policy for ages.
They've ran on it, they've said they're going to do it. And it's kind of finally it's a policy that's finally kind of come back to bite them on the arse, because the turfy wings of the SNP, there's a joke in there if you noticed it, are livid at the idea that this kind of thing could pass, that trans women could be recognised as women. It's broken quite a few of them.
Let's be clear about the actual reform, because I find this is this plays into the sort of the turf narrative, because what they love to do is misrepresent what the legislation would actually do. Not that they're right anyway, but it's stunning to me how a bill that is essentially an administrative change to a bureaucratic process to make it more dignified and to align with the European Court of Human Rights has somehow managed to be spun by a bunch of dark money funded, evangelical, Texan connected, massive dipshits into being some get out of jail free card for sexual assault.
Yep.
Kind of thing. It's bizarre. It's insane. If you go read the actual bill and try to find out what people are actually mad about, you will be scratching your head because there's nothing fucking there.
Yeah.
It's literally, from what I remember, and I've looked this up a bunch of times because it always drives me nuts. It would change from the person seeking a gender recognition form would no longer have to subject themselves to a medical panel of people who do not know them, right?
Yep.
And would instead be able to simply make a legal declaration about their change in personal circumstance. And the European Court of Human Rights has ruled on a similar case that said that you cannot you can't require or you can't restrict someone's ability to live as the person they are. You can't require them to subject themselves to a violation of their bodily autonomy, which is where the medical panel comes in. You can't demand that they have surgery. You can't demand that they undergo specific treatments. You can't put all these medical restrictions on someone being who they are, right? And that's what the bill changes. It just takes away from an overly long bureaucratic process that makes life miserable for so many trans people into something that just is dignified.
Yep.
And respectful, and has happened in a bunch of other countries. I'm sorry, I'm going long on. Sorry, that was a bit longer than I meant to. But Christ,
it's worth saying.
Like,
it's definitely worth saying.
If you look at the bill, the bill is short. It's easy to understand. It's on the Scottish Government website. You can look it up, and you can try to work out why people are mad, and you will not be able to find out because it's all lies and bullshit.
So Too Long Didn't Read. We are a trans right podcast. If you're not cool with that, stop listening to us. We don't want you. And everything Elijah just said is true. It's like it's not. This is not upending heaven. This is just changing bureaucratic process to stop immiserating trans people.
Yeah,
that's it. That's all it really is.
And the core issue there is that this will stop immiserating trans people, and that's why the TERFs are mad.
Basically.
Yeah. So, like,
and boy, howdy, are they mad.
The SNP specifically, right? Like I was saying, they have been a very unified party. There hasn't been any obvious fault lines to kind of hamper them in any way over the years and over successive governments until now, because we're at that stage of culture worship where the TERFs won't shut the fuck up, even when told to with funny JPEGs, and. The most high profile of these in the SNP is, I'm sure most people listening would know, is Joanna Cherry, who is an MP, also a QC, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So that highly again, fucking normal then.
Yeah, exactly. Fitting the bracket of a QC perfectly, yeah. She is livid about anything to do with trans rights, effectively. She has been very open as a gender critical fuck it, I don't know what
they...
Aye. One of them. So
can we just call them by their proper name, which is transphobes? Because they call themselves gender critical.
Yeah.
They're transphobes.
Yeah.
TERF was a self-defined acronym as well, wasn't it? Like
yes,
that comes
yes.
from them. And now they think it's a slur.
Yeah, I don't know. The slur part is that people are using it with contempt. That's what they object to.
That's it. Culture war. How does it work? So basically, this all came to a head after quite a few incidents with Joanna Cherry specifically and others within the SNP and the other Holyrood parties with the exception of the Scottish Greens. It kind of came to a head not long ago where Joanna Cherry, I can't remember exactly what it was she'd done this time. I imagine she probably threatened to sue somebody for saying that she said something or did something, but she actually did. I don't know. And she was raked over the coals and lost her position as a spokesman for the SNP at Westminster. This prompted a speech.
She was put to the backbenches, I think.
Yes.
Fully.
Yes.
Yeah.
This prompted a little intervention from Nicola Sturgeon, who said that it was bad and transphobia is bad, and the SNP's got some work to do to sort it out. And then, she lost her position at that point. I think it was a day or two later. She remains an MP. She remains an SNP MP, and there has been no other signs of any form of disciplinary action actually being taken against her, and that is the extent to which the SNP have deemed her actions punishable by, is losing her spokesman position. So,
do you want to know the inside scoop on what went down there?
Oh, please.
So, here's what happened. Because there was a party in the Scottish Parliament that were being unambiguously good on trans rights, this put the SNP in a bit of a bind, because usually when they don't deliver on some left-wing thing, they turn to their activists and go, oh, we'd love to do it, but we can't do it in the current political climate. We have to wait for independence when we will determine the political climate, right? But because there was a party in the Scottish Parliament just being unambiguously good on trans rights, this made it really hard to sell, oh, we care about trans rights, but we need to put it on the back burner or we need to compromise. It made it really hard to sell that to their younger members, and particularly their younger activists. This came to a head, and I'll throw my hands up. Like when I threw this stuff together, I didn't think the SNP would crack until after 2021. I didn't think the culture war thing would come home to roost so quickly, but it did, and they went for it. And what essentially happened is a whole bunch of high-profile, motivated activists within the SNP youth wing all went, fuck this, and resigned. And they all started to pile out, and this panicked them.
Yes.
Because they're the people who are meant to be putting in most of the work for this election. Because, inside fact of Scottish politics, people going around doorsteps and putting stuff through letterboxes using spatulas to avoid the teeth of the dogs on the other side, that is the engine of Scottish politics. It's all about putting literature through doors, and about getting TV appearances, and about generating energy in that kind of way, and online buzz. And when you take out your youth wing, when you tell them, no, fuck off, we're not going to do that thing that you care about, they stop posting online. They don't criticise your party directly. Some of them do. In fact, many of their high-profile, like, trans members all kind of walked. When they stop making buzz online, and they stop organising, and they stop actually going out to deliver leaflets, that scares the shit out of sitting MSPs and MPs. And so you create political pressure. And you create political pressure just by basically going, hey, the SNP aren't doing this thing, there's no reason they couldn't do it. They're just selling you out.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened, and that's why they had to take those steps, and that's why Nicola Sturgeon made an impassioned little video that she put on Twitter that was totally spur of a moment and wasn't in any way, shape or form.
And it was so brave and such a well-meaning thing to do. Actually, she was rattled as fuck.
She was not just rattled as fuck, but the whole staging of it, like, this is me being personal and honest. Like, I guarantee you that standing behind that phone, watching her and nodding as she's reading from the prepared kind of statement they agreed, I guarantee you her political team were there going, right, okay, well, this is what we've agreed the line is, Nicola, now let's frame it and make it look raw and authentic.
Oh, yeah.
And they did that to stem the bleeding, basically.
Yeah.
Except that might have placated some of their youth wing and some of the pro-trans wing. But unfortunately, we mentioned those turfs are all mad as fuck. Mm-hmm. And that leads us to where we are today, David.
So, I mean, even as another slight precursor to where we got today, we've seen a couple of smaller outfits of, again, like entirely on the fault line of trans rights and people not fucking liking them. Sorry, can I just
briefly interject? And maybe just put this in before we get to the next bit. The political issue that triggered the mass resignation was not actually to do with the GRA. It was to do with Humza Yousaf's famous hate crime bill.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah, because I think Joan Lamont had put in a bunch of really shitty, sneaky, sort of turfy amendments.
Yep.
That were all geared about like language and talking about like the other sex instead of other sexes or the other gender, basically trying to reframe everything as a binary and trying to put in an amendment that the hate crime bill would not include any sort of consequences for saying whatever the fuck you wanted about trans people, and a couple of SNP MSPs voted for the amendments. The SNP overall whipped to abstain, and that was the big one. It was the whipping to abstain that pissed people off. And since then, they've been voting against Lamont's shitty amendments because she tried a few more afterwards.
Well,
Big Keith energy.
Yeah, they got that right. Like, they suddenly, when their youth wing said, no, fuck this, we're taking our ball and going home, you don't have to do this. We've seen, like, the Scottish Greens are in the chamber and they're voting against this shite, and you, the party that we support, that we turn out for, can't. I mean, you know, there's only, much as with Keith, like you said, David, there's only so many ways someone can tell you to fuck off before you actually do.
Yes.
So...
Yeah. The hate crime bill has been very interesting. There's been some really funny aspects of it, like Tory MSPs getting really mad about the part of it that says that you can't, that you can be criminally guilty for committing hate speech in the home. Yeah. Like, what? Are you looking to, like, abuse your kids at the dinner table, you fucking dick? What? Like, what? Oh no, this bill. I
can't believe they won't even let me say the N-word over a Sunday roast.
Oh, God. It is. It totally is.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so there has been a few kind of smaller little splinter party attempts that have kind of popped up. The fucking Get the Wings Over Scotland guys fucking had a pop at it with the incredibly well-named ISP.
No, that's not him.
Was that not
That's
him?
not him. No,
oh, fuck.
no. The ISP is a vanity project.
Oh, I've got my
from a
rockets
woman
mixed up,
whose name I don't remember. But it turned out that she ran for an NEC position for the SNP shortly before launching the party, and after she'd apparently resigned from the party, so we don't know what the fuck happened there. They were mostly a sort of Twitter ball of rage party. Their launch was hilarious. They had a badly compressed JPEG as their profile picture that you could see had been just like right-click saved from Facebook. It still had the little X in the corner to like close the image that you get when you click on a picture on Facebook and it pops up. One of their big Twitter members was a Greek American lady who lives in one of the islands who used to go by Da Tartan Spartan.
This is the fucking MAGA one, isn't it? On
Twitter, yes. And then it turned out that she had a YouTube channel dedicated to being pro Donald Trump and doing big MAGA chud rants, which promptly vanished. But yeah, the ISP has just been a big fucking joke party. Is it Denise Finlay?
What's the other one then? What's the Wings one?
I don't think Wings ever got around to actually making one. He kept saying he would, and he raised a lot of money about it. But did he actually make one?
Oh, right, okay.
No, I don't think he did. Can I interject here, because there's going to be some very confused listeners. Just in case you don't know, Wings Over Scotland was a blog during the 2014 Scottish independence referendum, right? Run by a gentleman who lives in Bath, and lived in Bath at the time, self-styled as the Reverend Stuart Campbell. And they did a whole bunch of pro-Scottish independence explanations, including putting together like a book of common policy points and rebuttals on things like currency and all the rest of it, right? But the Reverend Stuart Campbell is also what I would describe as a transphobe. That is my opinion. My opinion is that the Reverend Stuart Campbell is a transphobe.
If that's not enough for you, he also blames the victims at Hillsborough. So, like, if you want the kind of calibre of prick we're talking about, there you go.
And he was a video games journalist before that. So, I mean,
who famously got into a forum argument because he couldn't understand that when Lara Croft jumped off a moving vehicle, in his mind she should immediately have stopped moving and fallen to the ground behind the vehicle, because he didn't understand the idea of sustained momentum. And he got into a multi-page argument because he refused to admit he was wrong about that.
The greatest thread in the history of forums.
Games journalists are, yeah. So that's the kind of guy he is, and he is right bellend, and he's very anti-Nicola Sturgeon, pro like the old SNP, give us back, Alex Salmond, and he was talking about launching a political party in Scotland. Remember, he lives in Bath. Launching a political party in Scotland to stand solely on the list, to take all the SNP list votes, and to be basically right-wing SNP.
So, well, yeah, we have all these pop-up parties. There's the ISP, fantastic acronym. It's the Independence for Scotland Party. But yeah, if you Google ISP, I wonder what comes up first. There's the AFI, which is Alliance for Independence. I don't know who's involved with that. There's been a couple of non-independence pop-up parties as well, most notably George Galloway's weird new British fascist vehicle.
That's All for Unity, I believe. Complete with a 4. Like, the numeral 4.
All for
Very
Unity.
Web 2.0.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. Does he rap about Unity?
No, that's his is basically a fash party, anti-independence fascist kind of street.
Back in 2014, I remember he paid for a bunch of incredibly archaic sectarian fear-mongering banners around parts of Glasgow, being like, the SNP want to come murder all the Catholics or something, or he was playing both sides. It was incredibly bizarre. And I mean, it's really testament to what can happen to someone who for so many years was an avowed socialist, that the extent to which British nationalism can actually break your fucking brain.
I think he's just a political opportunist, and he's basically looking for his grift, and he thinks of as a niche here that I can fill. I can be useful to the establishment.
It's not. This isn't very nice. Like, the guy's no well. He went to Iraq. He was in the desert. He inhaled whatever it was all those soldiers did, and he's got Gulf War syndrome. Like, just leave the guy alone.
Jesus. Go on, round up the other minor parties then, because we're getting to the important one.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's it. There's ISP, AFI. There might be one more.
There's Reform UK, which is Nigel Farage's new candidate.
Right, yeah.
They're the ones who got a bunch of European MEPs before we left Europe. So yeah, they're apparently standing. I've not really heard much from them, but apparently they're doing things in Scotland for this election. Stay tuned for that heavyweight. Sorry, we forgot the really big titan of Scottish politics. The Scottish Christian Party, proclaiming Christ's lordship.
Now, they're not a new pop-up party, but they are very funny.
Yeah, they're one of these little nice, like, just absolute, totally off-the-grid type parties that, like, 4 guys set up 25 years ago and they just continue running with it because they somehow have enough money to lose a deposit every 5 years.
They want to turn Scotland into Gilead from The Handmaid's Tale, essentially. Which sounds horrific, but it's actually like a little chihuahua puppy that's just really vicious and snarling at you, but it can't actually accomplish anything, so it ends up being kind of cute and fun as it snaps at your heels.
This is probably the most widespread publicity they'll have had in years, actually.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
And the less said, the better. And that takes us to today, where Alex Salmond decided he was going to launch the Alba Party. Okay, so that pissed people off from the get-go because it's the Alba Party, or it should be. The word is not Alba. Well, they should spell it like that. It's Alba because Scottish Gaelic or Gaelic is a language where you have those occasional little vowels in between consonants. It is the Alba Party.
I love, I genuinely, I know people who are linguists, I know people who speak Gaelic, and all respect to them when they say this stuff. All respect to them, right? But the vast majority of Scots do not speak Gaelic, have never spoken Gaelic, don't understand Gaelic pronunciation, and yet they're still coming in with this shit now. It's really funny to me. It's like, I'm putting my hand up. I did not know it was not pronounced Alba. I thought it was pronounced Alba. I'm willing to bet that most listeners in Scotland didn't know it wasn't pronounced Alba, because no one's ever mentioned it before. No. But this is a very convenient thing to beat Alex Salmond over the head with today. And so now today, everyone, of course, knows that it's pronounced Alba. And that's not out of sympathy for Alex Salmond, fuck him, but just come on. I mean, Gaelic by this point is, I think, a fully politicized language. I don't think you can really separate it. There's some well-meaning people who really try to, but I think the cat's out of the bag. Bag is baga, by the way. It's funny. We've had a wee argument over this. I am fully in favor of
just Gaelic everywhere in every school for like all the kids everywhere in the country, I think that would be great. And I'm more than happy to weaponize whatever political connotations are tied to the language to get there. So, mandatory Gaelic for everyone.
I am not. I do not like that. I used to work in a pub, and it was in Glasgow, and quiet morning, and this wee kind of old couple comes in, and they sit down, and the guy starts talking to me in Gaelic. And I was like, I've not got a clue what you're saying. Didn't even know he was talking fucking Gaelic, because you hardly hear it unless you go looking for it. At least down this way. And the guy was fucking raging. Like, he had to get chucked out. This was before pints were sold. This was like fucking 10 o'clock in the morning. And I had to chuck him out the pub because he became such a cunt because I couldn't understand what he was saying. And from that point, I just don't like it. I'm just sick of it. It's just, I don't want anything to do with it. My one and only exposure in the real world to someone who spoke Gaelic, and that's what I got.
Suddenly, David voting no makes perfect sense.
Critical support for the guy.
It was on that day you decided you want to shag the Queen.
I've never known fucking anger like it from just not understanding what some cunt was saying. Just absolutely bizarre. Like, I know the guy's not a fucking avatar for like what most people who speak Gaelic are, but like, you've walked into a fucking pub in Glasgow and you've tried to order a breakfast in Gaelic, and I'm looking puzzled. The thing you don't do is get arsey with me about it, because he could speak English fine. I know that because he called me a cunt on the way out.
I mean, for future reference, the word is brackish, if that helps at all.
I mean, it might have at the time.
If only you had been there at the time, Elijah. To step up from behind the bar, tap David on the shoulder and go, I've got this one, mate, you're fine.
The Tartan Crusader. Fuck. Right. So yeah, Alex Salmond today, after a long, drawn-out public fucking... I didn't even want to call it a scandal. I was about to call it a scandal, but it's not really, is it? Alex Salmond was accused of harassing women in and around the government. From what we can piece together, because everything is, very vague and sort of complicated and interweaving, what deadly webs. He went to Nicola Sturgeon, who was leader at the time, and asked her for help in shielding him from the accusations, in protecting him. And she refused to do so. And so he threw a massive tantrum and decided to accuse everyone of stitching him up.
This is all very allegedly. We don't know.
Yeah, no. I said from what we were able to piece together, because we have no idea.
He did.
There was a court case.
Court.
Yeah, he was found not guilty and not proven on various accounts. So of course,
my understanding is that of the cases he got, all of them were not guilty, apart from one, which returned the Scottish result of not proven. And I apologise if I have got this wrong. This is just from recollection, and I'll happily own up if I've misrepresented this in any way. But the Scottish not proven verdict is basically, we're not convinced of your innocence, but the state hasn't made a compelling case that you're actually guilty of the crime.
Kind of, because technically that's what not guilty means, right? Because the court doesn't decide whether you're innocent. You're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but the not proven is a convenient sort of like halfway point where the jury didn't want to commit to what not guilty has come to mean in like a, in a non-legal sense. It's an interesting little intersection between legal frameworks and how people actually think. But yeah,
if I can frame it in a very simple way, right? He may have molested women, but he also nearly got Scottish independence, so it's impossible to say if he's bad or not.
Okay,
that's what the not proven verdict is.
To be fair, Sir Walter Scott referred to it as the bastard verdict, right?
Yeah.
By which he meant it's like a halfway thing.
Yeah.
But, there's other connotations to that which might be applicable in this. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's a very interesting little quirk of the Scottish legal system, and I think quite a few countries would probably benefit from having it. If for no other reason than for the disconnect between what happens in a legal framework and how it gets reported on in larger sort of civil society, because people aren't lawyers and they don't know what things mean. So it's useful to have more terminologies like that. But anyway, so he wasn't found guilty, and then he decided to accuse the government of trying to stitch him up via some civil servants or something. And there were inquiries, and they went on for ages, and all his fans were on Twitter crowing about how the storm is coming. They became QAnon type people. Hashtag a storm is coming was very commonly seen across Salmond supporters. Everything got really fucking deranged and really, really silly. And then I think just last week, the inquiry came out. So first, inquiry members. So there was a committee that was pretty much split along political lines. Can I take
this bit, Elijah, actually? Yeah, okay. So it's important for this bit to know a little bit of background, which is that Andy Whiteman... Andy Whiteman felt he was unable to continue in the Scottish Greens while the Scottish Greens were so firmly in favour of pro-trans sort of rights, and so he resigned from the party. And he's no longer a Green MSP. He's still a sitting MSP, and apparently he's going to try and get elected again, this time, I think, in the Highlands and Islands, I think.
Yes, Highlands and Islands are independent, yeah.
Yeah, so, good luck to him. So he resigned, but... thing is, he was the committee member on that committee that was put there, I believe, as when he was a Scot Green, essentially.
Yep.
So he's been on that committee. And so what happened is the committee's investigating, did the government stitch up, Alex Salmond? And as part of this, it was, did Nicola Sturgeon break the ministerial code? Did she lie? Etc. And immediately the Tories and, Labour and Lib Dems to a lesser extent started leaking from the committee and just doing everything they could to throw dirt.
It's been really
on Nicola Sturgeon.
Fucking funny. I'm sorry. It's
yeah. They leaked that the committee was going to find her guilty, all this kind of stuff.
Yep. This is
Scottish Green's position has been that this is a farce, and that the whole point is to find out, first of all, did Nicola Sturgeon and the Scottish government do anything wrong? And second of all, how did it fail the women who came forward with complaints, because some of their personal stuff has been leaked as well, including by this committee.
That was the committee to find out whether Nicola Sturgeon breached the ministerial code did quite happily and quite gleefully breach the code itself in a far more serious manner by leaking information from the committee. I think is what is
That is certainly how it looks to me from the outside. We of course can't determine whether they broke the ministerial code without a committee to determine whether they broke them. Anyway,
but that's what it looks
point
like.
Point is, the Tories scheduled a vote of no confidence off the back of this, and then the committee returned, actually she hasn't broken the ministerial code in our view. And so when it came to the vote, the Scottish Tories voted to say that she had broken a ministerial code. The SNP and the Greens said, no, we're not going to participate in a vote with no competence. This is bollocks. We find her competent. And the Labour and the Lib Dems abstained, because of course they fucking did.
I mean,
it's very clear that Salmond's political party was prepared on the basis that she'd be found to have broken. That's clearly what they were ready to do.
Yeah.
And inexplicably they've gone ahead with it anyway.
Aside for this committee stuff, right, because that's obviously been a backdrop to this party. I watched, I missed the start of it, but I watched a fair bit of that fucking press conference that he did out of morbid curiosity and some gleeful enjoyment at the idea that the SNP might be finding some hurt coming up in the next election, because I don't want them to have a majority. That would be bad. I'd much rather the status quo continued as opposed to them have a fucking majority. So if this makes things harder for them. The selling point of the party is that it is a pro-independence supermajority that Alex Salmond's trying to build. Now,
all right.
This
Is this where I should explain the how the actual voting works? Maybe
Well,
this is a whole thing.
Just after I say that technically already exists, because the SNP and the Greens form a majority of the Scottish Parliament seats. So he's kind of trying to sell something that's already there. It's just not for the left this time.
There was someone did a quick sort of fag packet analysis about who he would be endangering, and I think out of the 6 regional seats that they've announced, it would endanger 1 SNP seat, I think 2 Greens, 2 Labour. What's that put me at? 4, 5, and 1 Lib Dem? No, it's got to be more than that. But anyway, it was 1 SNP seat that I remember seeing. That was a big thing. Yeah, so he's.
So, to understand how the Scottish Parliament works, it's dead simple. There's a whole bunch of constituencies, right? Mm-hmm. And these are basically, they're constituencies. You elect them, boom, there you go. You've got your local MSP. In addition, there are 8 regions that Scotland is divided up into. And basically, after the constituencies are elected, they then look at all the votes for the region. And if you have elected an MSP in a constituency in that region, your vote gets halved on the regional vote. And the more you have, the more it gets reduced. Mm-hmm. So that, essentially, if you do really well in constituencies, you will not do really well in the region. Okay? And so it's meant to balance out. It means that all the parties get squeezed out of constituencies can then pick up regional MSPs, right? That's the theory. And so that means, for example, last time round, the SNP really wanted to make sure the Greens didn't, get any purchase in Parliament. And they told the members, both votes SNP. Vote for SNP on your constituency vote for the SNP on your regional vote. And this resulted in basically no regional MSPs for the SNP being elected. There was very few, very, very few. Yeah. And it meant that a lot of, you got Scot Labour, you got the Tories all came in off the back of it, basically. Hello everyone, James here. I woke up in the middle of the night because I realised I'd misexplained something. And in the interest of getting back to sleep, here's how the regional list system actually works. When it comes time to allocate MSPs from a regional list, they first divide the vote each party has received by 1 plus the number of MSPs they've already had elected in the region. And then, in each subsequent round, when they're allocating more regional MSPs, they repeat that calculation. What does this mean? Say in central Scotland that the SNP take every single constituency seat. Their vote for the regional list would start out divided by 1 plus the number of constituency seats in central Scotland, at which point the percentage would be so low they're not going to get anyone elected. By way of contrast, say the Greens start out having no constituency seats in central Scotland, bit sad, but they have a very good regional list vote. They would get an MSP, and then when it comes time to do the next regional MSP, their vote would be divided by 1 plus the 1 they've already just got. It'd be halved. And that's what was in my head when I said what I was saying on the podcast. So, that's how it works. That's why it is proportional. It's meant to balance out the constituency seats and give all the other parties that people voted for a voice in the Parliament. Having explained this, I'm going back to bed.
Yep. If you'd like an example, in my region, the Northeast, every single constituency in 2016, bar 1, went to the SNP, and they picked up a big fat 0 of regional list wins.
Now, what would happen if every SNP voter was to give all their votes to the SNP for the constituency, and then give all their votes to another party in the regional list? The Parliament would basically be stacked with those two parties. Mm-hmm. That would be the net effect of it.
Yeah.
And the SNP doesn't want that to happen for obvious reasons. They don't want to have a serious competitor in the chamber. First of all, they'd rather it be the Tories. They'd rather be fighting the Tories for reasons we've established. They like to point at them and go, look, we're not that. And so they're their favourites to go up ahead in the chamber. And second of all, they just don't want another big party to be able to challenge their kind of position within, Scottish politics as hegemonic. And so they're very keen not to have their list folk go to other parties. All of these little parties we've just heard mentioned that have been launched, including Alex Salmond's Alba Party, or Alba Party, depending on how you want to say it, they basically are proposing to stand solely on the regional list and are hoping they can convince the SNP voters to all give them their vote so that they can weigh into the chamber alongside the SNP. That's where that stands. That's what he's aiming for. Unfortunately, I don't believe Alex Salmond has very good favourability ratings in Scotland. I don't think he's actually well liked at this point.
It sounds like you have those numbers to hand, James. Is that the case?
I don't have them to hand because I'm pretty certain he's hated. Last I checked, okay, I believe I looked at it today and it was like 14% favourability. Like, the guy is not well liked, especially after the back of the court cases. So
yeah. He was expecting that to go in his favour. He was hoping for like a big triumphant return. He's the righteously adjudicated, maligned, unfairly condemned hero of Scottish independence. It's massive ego, severe boomer brain as well. He can't stand that things are moving away from that paradigm that they sort of used to be in.
But it's okay. It's okay. Like it's not all Alex Salmond, because he does have people standing on the list, right? including some former SNP MSPs, right?
Yes.
So he's got some good talent. David, do you happen to know who he's got coming along with him?
It's Turf, isn't it?
I believe so. And this is where I was hoping you actually had it in front of you, David.
I don't know.
Okay, hang on.
Well, I know Chris
I remember
McElhenney.
seeing the name, and I remember not recognising the name and thinking, all right, okay then. That was the end of it, really. Mm-hmm. Like, he's managed to pull some fucking non-entity from the SNP.
He's got Chris McElhenney, who is mostly known for being a dipshit on Twitter. So that tracks.
We've got businesswoman Cynthia Guthrie, CEO of the Guthrie Group.
Don't know what that is, but I'm already distrustful.
Yep. Who else do we fucking have here? Like, very little.
Yeah, it was 4 people he announced, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, this is cool.
You can get a lot done with just 4 people. I mean, look at the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, it's like he's got until next Wednesday to get more people, so I'm sure that they will have done a very rigorous vetting process for all of the people who get on board. So please do look out for anyone standing for the Alba Party, because they will almost certainly have some absolutely amazing issues coming out on Twitter.
In good standing with the idea of pop-up parties, Chris McElhenney, similarly to the woman who started the ISP, was, I think, just like yesterday in an SNP meeting via Zoom, where he acted as a member and tried to ask a question, even though you'd have had to have resigned earlier, I think. Anyway, we don't know. Right? We don't know what they're doing, how many regulations they're breaking, if any at all, but the whole thing is just very sus and very funny.
I can't wrap my head around the fact they've been allowed to call their party the Alba Party or Alba Party. I don't get that, because you're not allowed to name yourself the Scotland Party. That goes against the code.
I can only imagine it's because the SNP haven't managed to inject the Gaelic aspects into that part of the electoral law.
It's just nuts is what it is.
Possibly for very selfish reasons.
I mean, it's weird. I'd be interested in knowing why, actually, because that is a bit fucked up. I mean, there was...
Well, actually, I think you'll find that he's allowed to call himself the Alba Party because it's actually Alba, so it's not the same thing.
There you go, yeah. Hoisted by my own petard.
Yeah,
there was
so
an issue
I'll take the money for that defence that I've just saved you there, Big Eck. That'll do me.
I'd also like to know where he got the funding for it. I'm guessing it's from his crowdfunders he did for his legal defence.
So this funding's going to be fucking amazing, because Alex Salmond still does have a show on Russia Today. Yeah. So prepare yourself for so much liberal fucking hand-wringing. I can't wait for Carol Cadwallader to fucking find out about this.
I was just going to say, someone get her on the line and be like, Carol, we need you. Put the Russia sign in the air. You have to find out.
So Putin's candidate.
I'm just picturing the comedy scenario where he keeps it going during Purda, during the election, but he has to bring on other leaders for balance. So he has to bring on Nicola Sturgeon just for balance.
That'd be really funny.
He did actually address this in the press conference and said that he would be suspending the show while the election was ongoing. So he's obviously been wise to the fact that he can't continue that and getting his large viewership of tens of people.
To really set the tone, his first question from journalists. Do you want to guess who the first journalist was to ask him a question?
Stu Campbell.
Yeah, it was Reverend Stuart Campbell.
Oh, jeez.
I wasn't
Yeah.
First question to Wings Over Scotland did.
So, I mean, it's on YouTube if you really fucking want to go and watch this. It is a shit show. Like, it was like a screen grab. It was like just badly cropped Twitch. Where like the top part of his head was cut off, he wasn't in the middle of the frame. You couldn't hear any of the questions for literally the first fucking hour of the thing. It was just like watching someone silently mouth a question and then cutting back to Alex Salmond just kind of nodding along to it, and then he would just answer something that no one heard. He also, like, to complete the image, he did basically launch the party from a cupboard somewhere. Yes.
Like, that's how it looked.
Yes. The whole thing was just an absolute tech shit show. It was unreal. We did better on our fucking election live stream. That's how bad it was.
I'm just looking at the national page here, and there's a byline. Article number 8 suggested for you. Can anyone explain what is motivating Alex Salmond's actions? ?
Yes. One of the funniest things though was the just the people who were asking the questions. And there were so many people who were just bloggers. And that is such a fucking weird thing to me. Like, I mean, I genuinely do try and avoid Scottish politics as they're happening. And it's because it's a horribly fucking weird, small and parochial environment of all these like amateur bloggers.
I'm betting the wee ginger Doug was in the room, yeah?
I think that makes sense because something that we've overlooked to mention, I think, is the pronounced overlap between the Joanna Cherry turf wreckers and the pro-Salmond faction during the inquiry. So the two events in Scottish politics, which was the hate crime bill and associated transphobia chat, linked up with the Salmond inquiry thing. And these two groups kind of coalesced into one big flaming one big flaming ball of online fury. And I say online very specifically there. So the fact that it's all bloggers at his press release at his party launch, doesn't surprise me at all. Because
it's not surprising, but it is a very specific Scottish flavour of cursed.
There was a poll recently about, this was before the inquiry results came out, about whether SNP members believed Nicola Sturgeon or Alex Salmond. And it was overwhelmingly Nicola Sturgeon. But interestingly, I found it was kind of split 50-50 about whether they thought the party was divided. So what that tells me is that the vast majority of SME members are behind Sturgeon, but they think everyone else isn't. Or they think there's a lot of people who are not. And
God, I wonder what kind of environment where a broad church of many different and very polarised opinions are all kept under one roof.
I mean, I was going to make the point that this is because of the very, very explicitly fabricated media narrative. Laura Kuenssberg tweeted like 16 times about the Salmond inquiry on the day that the police bill went down in London. Yeah. And she didn't tweet a thing about that, right? So there was a very concerted effort to make this look in the national press like it was really bad for Sturgeon.
I don't think Laura Kuenssberg's tweeting is going to be like the sole indicator on one poll. Like, the SNP as a broad church party definitely do have the limitations and the failings of a broad church party, which is going to be some sort of like general distrust about those around you. I'm saying this from being in Labour through the fucking Corbyn years. Like, there is absolutely going to be distrust about it, and see when that comes public for the first time, oof.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm just like, there's a disconnect there.
Oh, yeah,
which I think is
yeah,
interesting.
absolutely,
But the main point is that this takes place largely online and in media narrative bubbles, and I don't think it'll have as tangible an impact in the actual election as people think it might.
Well, you mentioned the actual election, and I'm going to do a David here and move us on, right? Because where's this going? What do we actually think is going to happen this election? What do we want to happen this election? Because this is the maximum chaos election.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
I don't think you could, like, we've got multiple parties launching specifically to fuck around on the list. We've got the majority of campaigning curtailed because of coronavirus. We don't yet know what effect coronavirus is going to have on the actual polling day, and, like, you know, stay fucking tuned for that one. Yeah, where do we think this goes? What do we want to happen?
I mean, what I want to happen is the complete destruction of the SNP so that the left can finally be freed from a fucking broad church and they can start pursuing socialist policies while they wait for independence. Jesus Christ.
David, I'm afraid that Rise has disbanded.
It's fine. There's the Greens. Rather than some fucking ego project set up by a room full of people who weren't fucking around at the right time to get into the Revolutionary Communist Party.
Oh, you just said exactly what I said in 2016 to my fellow workers. Like, we were sitting in a room watching Rise come in, and that's literally the vibe.
Yeah, oh, it's fucking Brendan with a Jimmy hat on, 3 feet above his fucking eyes. Fucking, it won't happen. Like, the SNP's not going to fucking, it's not going to give me what I want. It's not going to do the spectacular split, which finally frees the left to do some actual left policy in a left party while they wait for independence. And it's a shame. But I think largely what's going to happen here is, hopefully, I'm hoping, the SNP are robbed of a majority. I just don't want them to have that. If it has to be anything, it has to be the way it is now. I'd like to see the Greens increase their number of seats. I'm not entirely confident that they will, largely because, like you said, COVID, who knows how that's going to fucking affect shit. We'll just really need to wait and see. I think for quite a while there has been a general, not a malaise, but like a kind of disquiet about the SNP and the fact that they're coming to a point now where they're really in a pretty bad bind of, we can't deliver the thing that we're supposed to, because while the Tories are in power, they're not going to be granted a referendum. Everything outside of the way that you get that referendum is all very much untested and unsure and largely down to law shagging, because unless they just go and declare a UDI, what can they actually do other than be very nice to people in spider brooch robes? Like, that's really all they can hope for. And, like, no. If you think that the courts will be that fucking eager to be, oh yes, please do have an independence referendum, with the amount of shit that the current Tory government already took off the courts, I think we'll be quite surprised to see if that kind of fight back, if you will, from the legal minds there would actually be as forthcoming for anything opposed to the government.
I mean, I have no real interest in speculating about Plan B stuff or what's going to happen after the election, because I think the election itself is a large turning point, not just in what could be done, but in people's willingness to actually do so. As far as like the Plan A for independence, which is, hold a legal referendum with the consent of Westminster, there's a lot of issues with that, and people are rightly wondering, well, hang on, what's the Plan B then? I don't think there's much point talking about a Plan B until you get to the point where you need to enact it. So I don't really. Yeah.
It's more the almost inevitability of how Plan A would go. Like, I just think that it's been long enough now in the SNP. Like, obviously, I mean, they've had to fucking say, well, we're not going to do anything right now because of fucking COVID. And to some, I think that's felt like quite a convenient out, and to others, like, well, actually, that's a sensible thing to do. And it just really depends where you fall on it. But like, it's been quite a while.
It's hard to cope with not many things happening after an intense period of many things happening in Scottish politics. But I think, I mean, the polling currently indicates the SNP to get a majority by 1 seat, so I suspect they won't get a majority. I suspect they'll have to form a minority government with the Greens, which I'm quite happy with. For what comes after, I have no clue, and I don't think it's necessarily productive to sort of speculate because so many things could happen. What I'm waiting for is the election, and then the day after is a whole new chapter. And there's so much that's been leading up to this point that we've been here for nearly 2 hours, and we haven't, delved into a lot of things that we could have.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've dodged the central stuff that we'd have to get into for obvious reasons. And that kind of, I don't know, the SNP, as they always do, they want to frame this election as being about Scottish independence. But I think this election is very hard to do that. It's very hard to do that because a lot of shit's happened and there isn't a clear path. There isn't a way to actually go, hey, this is how we're going to get a Scottish independence referendum again. That's not there. People kind of know it. And they're kind of shuffling and going, well, wait, what is the point? We've gone this far. Where is it coming in? What are you doing for us? So you then have to kind of look at the secondary issues, which the SNP don't want to do. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I think I would like to have a greater Green presence in the chamber. I will throw my hands up and admit, honestly, I don't know if that's going to happen. If you believe the polling right now, it will. The polling is very positive for the Greens right now. But this is the chaos election. And I think anyone who says, oh, it's definitely going to go X way is selling you something. I would like that. I tend to vote Green on the list. And I'm going to see what my options are for the constituency. I don't, Greens aren't standing in every single constituency because we're, pretty realistic about, we're not going to waste people's time. And where we are standing is because we think there's a chance we might actually get it. I don't know. I really don't know. I would not be surprised if the Greens return another 6 MSPs. I would not be terribly surprised if the Greens return 12 MSPs. I would not be surprised if, against the odds, the SNP sweep it and get another, supermajority on their own. Though I honestly think that's the worst case scenario for Scotland right now.
Yes, 100%. The last thing we need is Libs to have free reign.
Oh, the last thing we need is the SNP to be in a position where they're like, oh, that's it, we've got our mandate. And because then they'd be stuck and go, shit, what do we do now? And Scottish politics would grind to a halt again because it would all have to revolve around that question. And I don't think there's anything in the draw. I don't think there's anything
Did I not just say that?
Like you said, law shagging.
Yeah,
So,
that's all it would be. It would be the one question, but again, forever, because that's all Scottish politics ever is.
Yeah. For the record, Jamie, I do appreciate you being here because just you being here has put us all on good behaviour. It sounds stupid, but it's 100% true.
No, it actually is.
Thank you.
I mean, I was wondering, Jamie, did that all make sense? If you wanted to do a brief segment where you asked questions or
because if you say no, we need to start again.
No, I didn't follow any of it.
Right, lads.
All right, synchronise from a clap.
No.
So, Jamie, haven't had a crash course in Scottish politics. What do you think of this mess? I'm curious what an outsider who's got no dog in this fight thinks.
I don't know.
Neither do we.
No, it's all shit. And it's all shit, and it's all couched in one question, and that's all it ever is. There's never anything else. Scottish politics never changes.
Scottish politics died in 2014.
Yes.
There was only one option. Right, wrong, or indifferent, you could say it was a good idea, it was a bad idea. The only thing that could have caused Scottish politics to continue to live and for something new to happen would have been independence. Mm-hmm. Good or bad, whether it was a good decision or a bad decision. If we'd went independent in 2014, stuff would have happened.
I mean, at the same time, the SNP could have actually just started doing ideology again rather than one question. So
yeah, but they live for that one question. So
I know they do. I know. And so does all of Scotland. We just live to suffer 2014 forever.
Yeah.
Eternal 2014 of a spotless mind.
Yes. That's it, yeah. The libs in England have 2012, but we have 2014, and we are all made to suffer.
I think some good albums came out that year at least, so, it's not too bad.
Mercy Killers, David. Take us away.
I will.
I've started talking about music. Kill it.
Yeah, that's it. You know we're at the bottom of the barrel when you start in fucking music chat. Right, okay, yeah. So, thanks for tuning in. That has been the Scottish Politics episode. This is what you waited for. I hope you're dissatisfied with it. You should be. You fucking horrible, horrible person.
We are not doing another one of these unless something actually changes in Scottish politics, like materially. So,
Yeah.
People asked for this, didn't they?
They did, yeah. They genuinely fucking did. The fucking mad lads.
Are you any wiser now? Probably not. Good.
No. Yeah, good, because we aren't.
No, Scottish politics is great. It's like, if you need to know about it, you know about it. If you don't know about it, you don't need to know about it. You can fuck off.
I mean, let's put it this way. I can think of exactly one thing and only one thing that would manifestly impact on Scottish politics right now, other than the Tories inexplicably allowing a referendum. Mm-hmm. It's the Northern Independence Party actually becoming a fucking going concern.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yes. It'd be very interesting to see a socialist-led independence movement perhaps be successful. I wonder what it would look like if it was socialist-led and did socialist things while it was doing the independence. Wouldn't that be interesting? Wouldn't it?
All right. When the Northern Independence Party wins the Hartlepool by-election, we'll have a chat about Scotpol again.
Yes.
Until then,
we'll catch you after.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, see ya.